So I really hope I'm not the only one that does this. I create like a whole script for these videos, not like a word for word script, more like a dot point sort of script. And I sit down, I go to film the intro, and I look at it and I just have no idea how to actually start. Anyways, so this is it. This is the final day of my travel diary series in Japan. And to think that it's already been 5 months since I actually started this series. It's pretty crazy to think just how fast time goes by. So as I mentioned in my previous video, this final day of the travel diary series is actually the return flight from Osaka in Japan to Melbourne. So we started this day relatively early to drive to Osaka Airport. We left pretty early to make sure that we didn't have to rush once we arrived at the airport. Now, little did we know that when we arrived at Osaka Airport that they actually had a lot of the COVID procedures still in place. So instead of each flight having their own separate check-in desk, everyone that was flying international all had the same line, and it was crazy long. I'm talking so long that they had to have staff standing at the end of the line just so you knew where you had to be. So we actually sat in this line for a good half an hour waiting to go through until we realized that this wasn't the line to check in the luggage. It was the line for security, which means we had to leave this line to go and dump our bags at the check-in and then return back to this long line in order to get to our flight. It was surprisingly confusing, and because of all the rushing around because of these COVID procedures, I really didn't have any time to film in Osaka Airport, even though we left with plenty of time. So we were so relieved when we finally sat down on our flight. And for those of you that are wondering, we actually flew with Singapore Airline, which I highly recommend. It was a really comfortable flight, and the food was actually really good as well. So one thing I highly recommend doing when you arrive at Changi Airport if you've never been there before is going up to the information desk. They were really helpful when it comes to finding free things to do around the airport. Now, because we arrived in Singapore as part of a 7-hour layover, we didn't really get a chance to see the Jewel Changi, unfortunately. But in saying that, there's still so much to do and see in Changi Airport. And exploring the airport made the 7 hours go by so quickly. After arriving at Singapore Changi Airport, you can really tell that they put a lot of effort into all the greenery. So this was the first of many gardens to see around Changi Airport. So to be honest, at first I thought all the plants around this airport were all fake. They were all just so green and so vibrant, and because they were inside, I didn't really think that they were real at first. But they definitely are. And in this garden, they actually had some koi fish as well. We then headed to the nearby gourmet garden. They had so many colourful fish in these ponds. To be honest, we probably watched these fish longer than we really should have. I feel like it would be amazing to have something like this in the middle of your home. Although in saying that, our apartment definitely is not big enough for something like this, and it would pretty much take up an entire room in itself. I think it's really crazy to think that all of these plants are real. I still wonder how they actually go about maintaining all of these plants. Next, we headed on to the sunflower garden. Now, this was actually my first time seeing these big sunflowers. I mean, outside of photos and videos. It may not look it, but the weather outside here was so hot. So, as amazing as all of these sunflowers were, we were really looking forward to getting back inside. So, while we were actually heading to our next stop in the airport, we saw this big cat made out of flowers. We then waited for the sky bus to arrive to take us round to the other side of the airport. So just as we got off the sky bus on the other side of the airport, there was actually this terrarium built into the wall. And I think it looked absolutely amazing. I've always wanted a terrarium like this. There's so many nice little spots in Changi Airport. So our next stop in Changi Airport was a place called the Discovery Garden. Now, to be honest, I don't really know what there was to discover here. It was pretty lackluster, to be honest. It was kind of just a roundabout way of going from one floor to the next. Although nearby there was this sitting area that was definitely a lot nicer. There were so many fish in these ponds here. They also had these cylinders that came up above the water's surface, and the fish were actually able to swim up through them. And this vortex was a pretty cool feature as well. This was actually a really relaxing area for sure, and there was a surprisingly large variety of fish too. We then headed on to the Lilly Garden, which was pretty much just an outdoor sitting area. There wasn't really a whole lot to see in the Lilly Garden. It was a little bit small and, again, not too much in there, kind of like that Discovery Garden. So we pretty much just walked straight through and headed straight on to the Cactus Garden. Now, the Cactus Garden was probably one of the places I was looking forward to going to the most. There was so many different types of cacti here. and I don't think I've ever seen a cactus tree like this before. To be honest, I didn't really realize just how many different variety of cactus there are. There was only one unfortunate thing about the Cactus Garden, and that is that it was pretty much one of the only smoking areas in Changi Airport, and it was unfortunately popular for that very reason. So it kind of did put us off a little bit, so we didn't really stay there too long. Although, nevertheless, it was still really enjoyable, and it was interesting to see all the different cactus. After the Cactus Garden, we headed back to the Sky Bus, this time to go to the Butterfly Garden. There was a lot of pineapples laid out for all of the butterflies to feed on, which made the area smell really nice here. I've always really enjoyed butterfly houses ever since I was a kid. And they actually had this kind of cocoon nest sort of station thing here for them as well. So after the Butterfly Garden, we actually headed to get some dinner at the food court, and they actually had these little koi ponds there as well. So the koi here pretty much just sat under this automatic feeder waiting for a snack. And by this time, we were getting pretty tired from our previous flight. In fact, I pretty much hadn't slept at all. I just don't really sleep on planes. And that's pretty much just because I can't really sleep sitting up. So after we finished having dinner, we headed back to the area where the Butterfly Garden was, because that was also where the free cinema is. So the free cinema kind of just cycles through a set of movies over and over again, and you can pretty much just walk in and out whenever you want. So because the cinema's nice and dark, we thought we would go and see if we can maybe get a couple of hours sleep before our next flight. So luckily for my wife, when watching a movie, she's able to fall asleep like that. But unfortunately, I still wasn't really able to fall asleep. So I was feeling really drained at this point. So not too long after the movie, we headed off to our departure gate, where we then finally finished the last leg of our trip by flying from Changi Airport to Melbourne. I really do hope that you enjoyed this travel diary series. It's been pretty fun making these videos, to be honest. I feel like I've kind of grown a little bit making these videos. Definitely when starting this series, I was not very confident at all. I pretty much could not get through a single video without sweating a little bit just from anxiety, but I feel like I am feeling a lot more comfortable now. And although this travel diary series has now come to an end, I feel as though my journey is only just beginning. I'm not 100% sure where things will go from here, but I'm really excited to find out. So please, let me know your thoughts and opinions on today's videos in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, hitting that like and subscribe button would really go a long way in helping support this channel. I fully plan on continuing to make videos, and my aim is to try and put out at least one video every week, no matter what. So click that notification bell if you want to see where this journey goes. And until next week, bye for now.